Why people pretend to love you. A Machiavellian dissection of affection, power, and hidden hunger. People do not pretend to love you out of confusion. They do it out of necessity. Love, as it is practiced in the world, is rarely a feeling. It is a strategy. It is not offered freely. It is offered conditionally. And the condition is almost never spoken. Look closely at your own life. At the smiles that arrived when you were useful. At the warmth that faded when you stopped providing. At the affection that grew louder when something was wanted from you. That was not coincidence. That was calibration. Most people do not love you. They love the access you provide. The comfort you stabilize. The identity they borrow through proximity to you. And when that access is threatened, love becomes performance. Affection is the most efficient disguise power has ever invented. The world does not run on honesty. It runs on incentives. Every interaction is an exchange, even the soft ones. Especially the soft ones. People pretend to love you because love disarms suspicion. It lowers your defenses. It slows your judgment. It teaches you to confuse attention with loyalty. Once you believe you are loved, you stop watching hands. You stop counting costs. You stop questioning motive. That is when the extraction begins. Machiavelli never believed love was pure. He understood it as leverage wrapped in warmth. A tool more effective than fear because it convinces the victim to cooperate. Fear makes people resist. Love makes them comply willingly. That is why rulers feared dependency more than rebellion. A rebel announces danger. A dependent person hands over control quietly. People pretend to love you when they need something they cannot take by force. Validation, security, resources, status, emotional regulation. Love is the currency used when coercion would expose intent. And the most dangerous lie you were ever taught is that love reveals truth. In reality, love conceals it. Watch how quickly affection evaporates when you stop agreeing. When you stop rescuing. When you stop explaining. When you stop bleeding on cue. That disappearance is not cruelty. It is diagnosis. They were never attached to you. They were attached to what you supplied. The moment you stop supplying, the mask collapses. People who genuinely love you do not require constant access to your nervous system. They do not need you reactive. They do not need you available at the cost of yourself. But those who pretend to love you need you predictable. They study your emotions the way hunters study terrain. Every sigh is a signal. Every apology is permission. Every explanation is a map. You thought you were being open. They were collecting coordinates. The truth is uncomfortable, which is why most never accept it. Love, as most experience it, is not about connection. It is about control without force. If someone can make you feel chosen, they can make you feel guilty. If they can make you feel needed, they can make you feel afraid of withdrawal. If they can make you feel special, they can make you feel replaceable. This is why people pretend to love you instead of confronting you honestly. Because honesty risks resistance. Performance guarantees compliance. Machiavelli observed that people rarely act from virtue. They act from appetite. Affection is just appetite with a pleasant accent. The problem was never that you cared. The problem was that you advertised your caring. You let emotion speak before intention was revealed. You mistook intensity for sincerity. You assumed warmth meant safety. It never did. Every betrayal you experienced followed the same blueprint. Access first. Trust second. Extraction third. Exit without apology. Different faces. Same machinery. You were not unlucky. You
were readable. People who pretend to love you are not villains. They are opportunists responding to incentive. When the world teaches people that survival depends on leverage, they learn to fake affection with surgical precision. They do not wake up planning to deceive you. They simply move toward advantage. And if love works, they use love. This is why love disappears when boundaries appear. Because boundaries interrupt extraction. The moment you say no, affection is tested. The moment you delay response, warmth cools. The moment you stop rescuing, disappointment masquerades as hurt. They will say you changed. You did not. They lost access. People pretend to love you because they are dependent on what you provide, but ashamed to admit it. Dependency is humiliating to the ego. So it disguises itself as devotion.
This is why they cling emotionally but resist accountability. Why they demand presence but avoid responsibility. Why they accuse you of distance when you ask for balance. They are not afraid of losing you. They are afraid of losing what you stabilize. Machiavelli warned that dependency is more dangerous than hatred. An enemy must confront you. A dependent person drains you silently. And love is the cleanest extraction tool dependency has. The moment you understand this, something inside you hardens. Not into cruelty, into clarity. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop negotiating affection. You stop confusing intensity with loyalty. You begin to observe instead of participate. And observation reveals everything. Watch who stays when you are calm, not performative. Watch who listens when you do not entertain. Watch who respects silence instead of punishing it. That is where truth leaks out. People who pretend to love you panic in silence. They rush to fill it with guilt, questions, emotional noise. They need reaction to confirm relevance. Silence terrifies those who rely on access. Machiavelli understood that the one who cannot be manipulated is the one who needs nothing he cannot produce himself. That is the axis of power. When you stop needing emotional confirmation from others, love loses its grip as leverage. You no longer collapse when affection is withdrawn. You no longer chase when warmth cools. You no longer explain yourself to be understood. Misunderstanding becomes armor, because people can only manipulate what they can read. Detachment does not begin with coldness. It begins with refusal. Refusal to perform. Refusal to over-explain. Refusal to bleed on demand. You withdraw not from people, but from exposure. You stop offering your inner world as common property. And something shifts. People who pretended to love you feel unsettled. They test you. They provoke. They withhold to trigger response. Do not react. Reaction is confirmation. Silence is recalibration. Every reaction you deny returns power to your center. People will call you distant. Let them. They are naming the distance between control and autonomy. This is where the real transformation begins. You start to see affection for what it is. Not proof of loyalty, but data. Not evidence of care, but information about motive. Praise becomes a signal. Criticism becomes a probe. Withdrawal becomes a tactic. Nothing wounds you anymore because nothing surprises you. Emotion stops being command. It becomes material. Machiavelli never advised killing emotion. He advised mastering it. Those who pretend to love you rely on your emotional reflexes. Once those reflexes disappear, the game collapses. You do not confront. You do not accuse. You do not demand clarity. You observe. And in observation, patterns emerge. The same people who claimed devotion disappear when they cannot influence you. The same voices that praised your kindness resent your composure. The same warmth that once felt intimate now feels transactional. That recognition is painful only once. After that, it is liberating. Because you stop searching for love where there is only appetite. You begin building a different posture. One where affection is welcomed, but not needed. Where connection is chosen, not chased. Where warmth is appreciated, but never purchased with self-betrayal. You stop rewarding performance. You start respecting consistency. People who truly care do not punish boundaries. They adjust to them. Everyone else leaves. That is not loss. That is filtration. And filtration is power. Silence is where pretend love dies first. Because pretend love needs feedback. It needs confirmation. It needs your emotional labor to keep the illusion alive. When you stop feeding it, the person behind the mask starts to leak. They will not say, "I was using you." They will say, "You've changed." They will say, "You're cold." They will say, "You don't care like before." What they mean is simple. You no longer behave in a way that benefits them. This is the first test. When people pretend to love you, their affection is not steady. It rises when they need you. It spikes when you pull away. It disappears when you require accountability. Real love does not behave like a marketplace. Pretend love does. You have to learn the difference between warmth and commitment. Because warmth is cheap, commitment costs. And most people do not pay costs they can avoid. They will give you compliments because compliments are easy. They will give you attention because attention is cheap. They will give you words because words do not require sacrifice. But the moment your needs inconvenience them, the voice changes. That is when you meet the truth. Machiavelli understood that the world respects outcomes, not intention. So stop judging people by what they claim. Judge them by what they do when there is no reward for doing it. Most people can behave well in comfort. It proves nothing. Character is revealed under cost. Watch how they act when you stop being useful. Watch how they act when your yes becomes scarce. Watch how they act when you no longer compete for their attention. Their behavior will tell you what their affection truly was. People pretend to love you because love gives them entry. It gives them access to your time. It gives them access to your mind. It gives them access to your identity. Once they have entry, they begin rearranging the furniture. They shape your behavior through guilt. They shape your choices through praise. They shape your self-image through subtle pressure. You think the relationship is mutual. They are quietly building a system where your stability depends on them. This is how dependency is engineered. Dependency is not always financial. Often it is emotional. A slow training process where you start measuring your worth through their response. If they are happy, you feel safe. If they are distant, you feel anxious. If they approve, you feel valuable. That is not love. That is control disguised as intimacy. And it starts with a simple trick. They give you attention early. Not consistent attention, intense attention. Attention that feels like selection. Then they reduce it. Not enough for you to leave. Enough for you to chase. The chase becomes your habit. The chase becomes your proof of devotion. The chase becomes your new identity. They do not have to pretend anymore. You will keep the relationship alive for them. That is how people pretend to love you. They teach you to work for affection. Machiavelli would call this useful cruelty. Not cruelty in violence, but cruelty in structure. A design that makes you obedient without chains. You apologize first. You explain more. You accommodate. You compromise yourself. You start calling this love. They call it success. This is why your kindness becomes a liability. Not because kindness is wrong. Because unguarded kindness invites exploitation. Goodness without boundaries is not virtue. It is access. The world does not punish kindness. It rewards those who know how to harvest it. People pretend to love you to harvest you. Your energy, your attention, your reliability, your resources, even your empathy. Empathy is a magnet for pretenders. Because empathy makes you excuse what should disqualify. They disrespect you and you explain their childhood. They lie to you and you explain their trauma. They disappear and you explain their stress. Your empathy becomes their shield. Your understanding becomes their escape route. You keep protecting them from consequences. So they keep repeating the behavior. This is not compassion. This is self-erasure. Machiavelli would tell you something harsh. Not to be cruel, but to be accurate. If you keep saving people from themselves, you become their instrument. And instruments are not loved. They are used. Pretend love survives on the hope that you will keep being soft. So they test you. They insult you lightly. They cross a boundary, by mistake. They withdraw affection to see if you panic. Every small test is not random. It is reconnaissance. They are asking one question. How much can I do before you respond? If you respond with anger, they learn how to provoke. If you respond with pleading, they learn how to starve you. If you respond with explanation, they learn how to confuse you. Your reaction becomes their instruction manual. Stop writing it. This is where detachment becomes strategy. Detachment is not you becoming heartless. It is you becoming unreadable. Unreadable people cannot be programmed. And programmable people cannot be respected. You have to understand what respect is. Respect is not a compliment. Respect is how people behave when they know you will not tolerate disorder. It is not a feeling. It is a calculation. People behave well around power, not because they are moral, but because power introduces cost. When you have no cost, you become a playground. When you introduce cost, you become a boundary. Pretenders hate boundaries because boundaries force honesty. If they truly loved you, boundaries would not threaten them. Boundaries would simply define the relationship. But for pretenders, Boundaries feel like rejection. Because boundaries interrupt extraction, they will respond in predictable ways. They will become dramatic. They will become wounded. They will become accusatory. They will act like you are harming them by protecting yourself. This is where most people fold. They fear being seen as bad. They fear conflict. They fear being misunderstood. They fear losing the person. So they remove the boundary. And the pretender learns something important. They learn you are controllable. Machiavelli would not ask you to be cruel. He would ask you to be consistent. Consistency is the weapon. If you punish a behavior sometimes, you train it. If you punish it always, you end it. Intermittent boundaries create intermittent respect. Intermittent respect creates endless manipulation. This is why people pretend to love you. Because you leave the door open. Not with your words, but with your emotional weakness. You want to be liked. You want to be seen as good. You want to be chosen. These are human desires, but in the wrong hands, they become your leash. The desire to be chosen makes you accept crumbs. The desire to be liked makes you avoid truth. The desire to be good makes you tolerate disrespect. Pretenders know this. Even if they cannot articulate it, they sense it. They feel your hunger and they feed it just enough to keep you attached. Attachment is the real weakness. Not love itself. Attachment. Attachment is when your peace depends on another person's behavior. And if someone can control your peace, they control you. This is why Machiavelli would never let affection sit above authority. Affection is unstable. Authority is structure. Structure is the only thing that survives pressure. So you must rebuild your emotional system around structure. The first structure is silence. Not silence as avoidance. Silence as discipline. When someone tests you, do not rush to explain. Do not rush to defend. Do not rush to repair. Pause. Let them sit with uncertainty. Uncertainty is where pretenders reveal motive. Because pretenders cannot tolerate ambiguity. They need to know if their access is safe. If you remain calm, they become restless. Restlessness creates mistakes. Mistakes create truth. They will overtalk. They will overjustify. They will attempt to regain control through words. Let them. Words are where the mask slips. Because consistent people do not need elaborate speeches. Elaborate speeches are camouflage. If someone says, "You're the only one I can trust," listen closely. That is not always intimacy. That is often recruitment. If someone says, "I've never felt this way before," listen again. That may not be love. That may be a hook. If someone says, "I can't live without you," understand what it means. It means they are trying to become your responsibility. Responsibility is how affection becomes prison. The world teaches you to feel honored by being needed. But being needed is not always a compliment. Sometimes it is a trap. Need creates obligation. Obligation creates guilt. Guilt creates obedience. A pretender will use these steps like a staircase into your life. Machiavelli would tell you to study the staircase. Where does this person demand access? Where do they react with jealousy? Where do they punish you for independence? That is your map. Jealousy is not always love. Often it is ownership fear. Ownership fear means you are a resource. And resources are guarded. If someone becomes angry when you are busy, they are not missing you. They are losing control. If someone becomes cold when you do not perform, they are not hurt. They are negotiating. If someone gives affection only after you comply, they are not loving you. They are training you. Training is the secret goal of pretend love. And training requires repetition. You will notice cycles. Warmth, then distance, then your chase, then their return. Warmth, then criticism, then your apology, then their reward. Warmth, then guilt, then your sacrifice, then their satisfaction. These are not emotional accidents. These are patterns. Patterns are where the truth lives. If you want to know whether someone is real, introduce one thing. Delay. Delay your reply. Delay your availability. Delay your approval. Not as a game, as a measurement. If their love is real, delay will not threaten it. They will remain steady. If their love is performance, delay will destabilize it. They will escalate. They will double text. They will guilt you. They will accuse you. They will suddenly need to talk. They will demand certainty, because performance cannot survive uncertainty. Performance needs cues. Performance needs applause. And you used to give it. You used to fill every silence. You used to chase every distance. You used to repair every tension. You were trained to believe that love means effort. Effort is not the problem. Misplaced effort is. Real love requires effort, but it does not require self-abandonment. Pretend love requires you to abandon yourself. Slowly. In the beginning, it feels like compromise. Then it becomes habit. Then it becomes identity. One day you wake up and you cannot recognize yourself. Your opinions are softer. Your boundaries are weaker. Your energy is drained. And you keep blaming yourself. You think you are not loving enough. Not understanding enough. Not patient enough. That is the final trick. Pretend love makes you feel guilty for noticing reality. Machiavelli would tell you to stop feeling guilty for seeing clearly. Clarity is not cruelty. Clarity is survival. Now we move into the second layer. Why do people pretend to love you, even when they dislike you? Because dislike is honest. And honesty is expensive. If they admit dislike, they lose access. If they maintain the mask, they keep benefits. A person can dislike you and still want your network, your money, your skills, your attention, your loyalty. So they pretend. They become pleasant. They become supportive. They become intimate. But watch their behavior when you succeed. Pretenders are rarely happy for you. They are polite about it. They clap with their hands but tighten with their face. They congratulate but introduce doubt. They praise but remind you of your weaknesses. This is not celebration. It is management. They want you successful enough to be useful, but not successful enough to be free. Freedom is what threatens them. A free person cannot be controlled with guilt. A free person cannot be bribed with attention. A free person cannot be punished with withdrawal. So they keep you emotionally dependent. They will give you love in measured doses. Not enough to fill you. Enough to keep you hungry. This is why you must treat affection as data. Not all affection is manipulation. But all manipulation uses affection. You do not become paranoid. You become precise. Precision is the difference between wisdom and bitterness. You are not here to hate people. You are here to stop being predictable. This is where your posture changes. You stop asking, do they love me? You start asking, what do they do when they cannot control me? That question is sharper than any romance. Because control reveals motive better than confession. Now implement the shift. Stop over-explaining. Over-explanation is begging for acceptance. Stop overgiving. Overgiving is buying safety. Stop overreacting. Overreaction is feeding the machine. You start becoming simple. Simple responses. Simple boundaries. Simple exits. You do not announce departure. You do not threaten. You do not lecture. You withdraw the moment the pattern appears. Most people think power requires confrontation. It does not. Confrontation gives pretenders a stage. They will cry, blame, twist, promise, perform. They will turn the conversation into a theater where you become the villain. Machiavelli would tell you to avoid theater. The cleanest power move is the quiet ending. You stop investing where there is no return. You stop giving access where there is no respect. You stop negotiating your dignity. And you do it without rage. Rage is still attachment. Calm detachment is the true break. When you end things calmly, you deny the pretender what they wanted most. Your emotional labor. They want your anger because anger proves they matter. They want your tears because tears prove leverage. They want your arguments because arguments keep connection alive. Calm ending kills the connection. It is not cruelty. It is closure without performance. This is where your life becomes quieter. Not lonely. Quieter. Noise leaves first. Then parasites. Then pretenders. And in that quiet, you begin to rebuild your standards. Standards are not demands you place on others. Standards are access rules you place on yourself. Who gets your time? Who gets your attention? Who gets your vulnerability? Vulnerability is not weakness. But vulnerability without discernment is a donation to predators. You stop donating. You start selecting. Selection is the birth of sovereignty. Now the next step is the hardest. You must confront why pretend love worked on you. not their tactics. Your hunger. What were you hoping to buy with affection? Peace, worth, belonging, safety. Most people chase love because they do not generate meaning internally. They use relationships as proof that they are enough. That is the deepest dependency. When you need love to feel valuable, you will accept counterfeit love. Because counterfeit love feels better than loneliness, at first. Then it costs you everything. So your real war is internal. You dismantle the addiction to being chosen. You dismantle the addiction to being needed. You dismantle the addiction to being seen as good. Because those addictions are entry points. The person who needs nothing cannot be purchased. The person who needs nothing cannot be threatened. The person who needs nothing cannot be manipulated. This is why Machiavelli valued self-sufficiency. Not as ego, as armor. Now you build it. You begin practicing non-response. Not ignoring people out of spite. Ignoring patterns out of discipline. You begin practicing delayed reaction. You let messages sit. You let provocations pass. You begin practicing emotional containment. You feel the impulse to defend, and you let it die quietly. Each time you do this, something changes. Your nervous system stops being public property. Your mind stops being a marketplace. And people feel it. They begin to approach you differently. They soften. They become careful. Not because you became cruel. Because you became costly. Cost is what creates respect in a world trained by incentives. And now you are ready for the next layer. The layer where love becomes a tool you can read, not a weapon used against you. People who pretend to love you rarely invent new tactics. They reuse ancient ones. One of the oldest is mirroring. They study what you value, then reflect it back to you. Your morals become their language. Your pain becomes their story. Your ideals become their costume. You think you've met someone who understands you. What you've met is someone who studied you. Mirroring feels intimate because it collapses distance. It creates the illusion of sameness. And sameness lowers defenses faster than any promise. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He warned that men are drawn to reflections of themselves. Not because reflection is truth, but because it feels familiar. Pretenders mirror because it accelerates trust. Trust gives access. Access gives leverage. They agree with you too quickly. They share your outrage. They echo your principles before they have earned the right to them. This is not alignment. This is camouflage. Watch how fast they adopt your language. Watch how easily they speak your values before demonstrating them. Watch how little resistance exists between your belief and their agreement. True alignment takes time. Performance is immediate. Mirroring is followed by flattery. Flattery is not praise. Praise is specific and grounded. Flattery is excessive and vague. You're different. You're rare. No one understands me like you do. I've never met anyone like you. These statements feel personal. They are not. They are universal keys. Flattery is designed to elevate you emotionally so you stop verifying behavior. It intoxicates your ego and dulls your skepticism. Machiavelli would tell you that flattery is poison disguised as perfume. Not because it feels good, but because it weakens judgment. Once flattery works, the pretender moves to the next phase. Identity attachment. They don't just compliment you. They tie your identity to their approval. You're a good person. You're so understanding. You're the strong one. You're the only one who gets it. These labels sound affirming. They are restraints. Once you accept an identity given by someone else, you begin protecting it. You behave in ways that preserve the label. If you are the understanding one, you tolerate disrespect. If you are the strong one, you hide pain. If you are the good one, you avoid confrontation. The pretender does not need to control you anymore. You control yourself. This is the most elegant form of domination. Self-policing. You stop asking what you need. You start asking what fits the role. And the role was never written for your benefit. People pretend to love you because love lets them define you. Once defined, you are predictable. Once predictable, you are manageable. The next tactic is public loyalty. They praise you in front of others. They defend you in safe spaces. They perform allegiance where it costs nothing. But watch closely. When the room changes, so does their posture. When authority appears, they retreat. When advantage shifts, they reposition. Public loyalty without private consistency is theater. Machiavelli warned that many appear loyal until loyalty demands sacrifice. Then they vanish. Pretenders use public loyalty as insurance. It makes you doubt yourself when betrayal arrives. They defended me before, maybe I'm wrong. They praised me publicly, maybe I misunderstood. They supported me once, maybe I owe them grace. That doubt is intentional. They know that past gestures will buy future tolerance. This is why you must judge loyalty by behavior under pressure, not by performance under comfort. Watch what happens when it costs them something to stand with you. Time, reputation, resources, risk. If loyalty evaporates under cost, it was never loyalty. It was positioning. Another tactic is selective honesty. They tell you partial truths. Enough to seem open, never enough to be vulnerable. They confess small flaws to mask large ones. They admit mistakes that don't threaten their power. They share pain that earns sympathy but avoids accountability. This creates imbalance. You reveal deeply. They reveal strategically. You bleed. They narrate. Machiavelli understood that controlled vulnerability disarms suspicion. It makes manipulation appear mutual. You feel closer. They gain insight. Never confuse confession with transparency. Transparency includes consequence. Confession without consequence is performance. Pretenders confess to bond, not to change. The next move is dependency reversal. Once they have leaned on you long enough, they flip the dynamic. Suddenly, you need them. Emotionally, socially, psychologically. They become the listener, the advisor, the validator. You start checking in. You start seeking reassurance. You start measuring yourself through their reaction. They did not become important accidentally. They positioned themselves there. This is when pretending to love you becomes power. They can now withdraw affection to correct behavior. They can use silence as punishment. They can create anxiety with absence. And because you are attached, you comply. Attachment is not love. Attachment is vulnerability without authority. Machiavelli would tell you this is where empires fall. Not from attack, but from reliance. Once reliance forms, the pretender no longer needs to pretend as hard. Their affection becomes conditional. Their patience shortens. Their expectations grow. They begin correcting you, managing you, critiquing you, for your own good. Control always arrives wearing concern. You're too sensitive. I'm just being honest. I worry about you. I say this because I care. Concern that diminishes you is not care. It is discipline. And you feel it. You feel smaller, less confident, more hesitant. You question your reactions. You doubt your instincts. You defer. That is the moment pretend love completes its function. You are no longer an equal. You are a resource. Now comes the most dangerous phase. When you begin to resist. Resistance does not look dramatic at first. It looks like boundaries, delays, silence, and pretenders respond to resistance with escalation. They accuse you of changing. They frame your growth as betrayal. They question your character. You're not who you used to be. You've become selfish. You've grown cold. These accusations are not about truth. They are about loss of control. Machiavelli understood that when power slips, people moralize. They turn control into virtue and independence into vice. Do not argue with moralization. Argument keeps you engaged. Detachment dissolves it. You must understand something crucial. Pretenders do not leave easily. They resist replacement. They will cycle through tactics. Guilt, charm, anger, victimhood. They will alternate warmth and hostility to destabilize you. This is not confusion. It is pressure. Pressure is designed to force a reaction. Your only winning move is non-reactivity. Not silence as avoidance. Silence as refusal to negotiate your autonomy. When you stop reacting, something remarkable happens. The mask slips. They become impatient. They become sharp. They reveal entitlement. They say things they cannot take back. And in that moment, clarity arrives. You realize you were never loved. You were managed. This realization is painful, but it is also final. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Now you enter the sovereign phase. You stop seeking connection through exposure. You stop bonding through confession. You stop earning affection. You adopt a different posture. Presence without pursuit. Warmth without availability. Kindness without obligation. You do not close your heart. You guard its gates. You understand that real love moves slowly. It respects distance. It survives silence. It does not panic when you are unavailable. It does not punish independence. It does not demand proof. Real love expands when you become more yourself. Pretend love contracts. This distinction becomes your compass. Now you begin rebuilding relationships intentionally. You test consistency over time. You observe behavior under stress. You measure respect, not emotion. You stop rewarding intensity. You start valuing steadiness. Steady people do not exhaust you. They do not keep score. They do not need constant reassurance. Pretenders cannot sustain steadiness. They burn out without reaction. They drift away, not because you rejected them, because you became incompatible with extraction. And something else happens. As pretenders disappear, space opens. Quiet, clarity, self-trust. You stop doubting your instincts. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop apologizing for self-respect. You realize something profound. You were never too much. You were too available. You were never unlovable. You were accessible without cost. Machiavelli would say this is where power returns to its rightful place. Inside you, you no longer ask, why do people pretend to love me? You know, they pretend because it works on the unguarded. They pretend because love disarms faster than force. They pretend because access is easier than conquest. And now it no longer works on you. You have learned to read the signs, the pace, the patterns, the pressure points. You do not harden into bitterness. You sharpen into discernment. You remain open, but not exposed. Warm, but not porous. Kind, but not exploitable. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional authority. You decide who enters. You decide what stays. You decide what leaves. No speeches. No ultimatums. No explanations. Just alignment. And alignment is rare. Most people will not reach it. They will continue mistaking intensity for intimacy. They will continue trading peace for affection. They will continue bleeding for attention. You will not, because you have crossed a line. You no longer live inside other people's hunger. You no longer orbit their needs. You no longer confuse performance with care. You have stepped into a different architecture. One where love is no longer a currency others spend on you. It is a value you recognize when it appears. And because you do not need it, you can finally see it. By the time you reach this stage, the question is no longer why people pretend to love you. That question has already been answered. The real question becomes this: why did it ever work on you? Not as an accusation, as an audit. Because Machiavelli never stopped at exposing external deception. He always traced power back to internal weakness. People could only pretend to love you because there was something inside you that needed the illusion. Not love itself, but reassurance, stability, meaning. Most people are not addicted to love. They are addicted to relief. Relief from loneliness. Relief from self-doubt. Relief from uncertainty. Pretend love works because it offers relief quickly. And quick relief is rarely honest. You felt seen. You felt chosen. You felt anchored. But anchors can also become weights. The hunger to be loved is not weakness by nature. It becomes weakness when it overrides discernment. When you allow affection to bypass standards. When you let intensity replace consistency. When you accept proximity as proof of loyalty. That is where the door was left unlocked. Machiavelli understood that men are ruled less by reason than by desire. And the strongest desire is to belong. Belonging is safety to the nervous system. So the nervous system will accept substitutes. Pretend love is a substitute. It mimics closeness without responsibility. It mimics loyalty without sacrifice. It mimics care without endurance. And because it arrives loudly, it feels real. This is why part 4 is not about them. It is about dismantling the internal structures that allowed access. You must understand the difference between solitude and abandonment. Most people fear solitude because they confuse it with rejection. So they tolerate false closeness to avoid it. But solitude is not rejection. It is separation from noise. And noise is what pretenders use to hide. When you fear solitude, you rush connection. When you rush connection, you skip verification. When you skip verification, you invite performance. The sovereign posture begins when you stop rushing. You let relationships breathe. You allow time to do its work. Time exposes inconsistency. Time reveals appetite. Time burns away performance. Pretenders do not last in stillness. They require motion, reaction, drama. Silence starves them. This is why detachment matures into discipline. Not emotional numbness. Emotional governance. You stop reacting in real time. You respond on your schedule. You stop narrating your inner world. You keep it contained. Containment is not repression. It is command. Everything inside you now answers to authority. Your anger does not speak first. Your sadness does not negotiate on your behalf. Your affection does not override judgment. Emotion reports. You decide. This shift alone changes how the world treats you. People speak differently around those who do not rush. They test less. They posture less. Not because you intimidate them. Because you are no longer readable. Unreadable people cannot be manipulated. Manipulation requires timing. Now comes the quiet reconstruction. You rebuild standards without announcing them. You do not say, "I won't tolerate this." You simply stop participating. You do not threaten distance. You create it. You do not explain your silence. You let it be interpreted. Explanation invites negotiation. Negotiation invites erosion. Machiavelli would tell you that power weakens when it justifies itself. Justification is submission to another's judgment. You no longer submit, not because you are arrogant, because you are precise. You begin to notice something subtle. People who pretended to love you become uneasy. They cannot locate you emotionally. They probe. They ask indirect questions. They fish for reaction. They test old triggers. And nothing lands. This frustrates them. Not because you are cruel, but because their leverage is gone. They were never attached to you. They were attached to your responses. When the responses disappear, the connection dissolves. And this is where most people feel guilt. They mistake disengagement for betrayal. They think they owe access. You owe nothing. Access is not a right. It is an invitation. And invitations can expire. The next realization is sharper. You notice that many people around you never intended harm. They simply operated within a system that rewards extraction. They learned to pretend because pretending worked. Understanding this does not require forgiveness. It requires boundaries. You do not need to punish them. Distance is sufficient. Punishment creates drama. Drama creates re-entry points. Quiet removal is clean. Now something shifts internally. You stop craving to be understood. You stop seeking validation for your choices. You allow people to misunderstand you. Misunderstanding becomes insulation. Because when people cannot fully read you, they cannot fully use you. This is where your presence changes. You speak less. Not because you have nothing to say. Because you no longer need to prove. Your words become shorter. Your pauses longer. Silence is no longer awkward. It is intentional. People begin filling it for you. They reveal motives. They reveal insecurities. They reveal agendas. Because silence invites projection. Projection is confession. You are no longer hunting for truth. Truth volunteers itself. Now you understand something essential. Love that must be proven constantly is not love. Love that survives without performance is. Real love is boring by modern standards. It is calm, predictable, unimpressive. It does not spike. It does not collapse. It does not punish. It exists whether you are impressive or invisible. Pretend love requires theater. Real love survives absence. This distinction rewires how you choose. You stop being impressed by intensity. You stop chasing chemistry. Chemistry without character is combustion. It burns fast. It leaves nothing. You begin valuing emotional reliability, behavioral consistency, respect under stress. These qualities do not announce themselves. They reveal themselves over time. And time is your new ally. Because you are no longer in a hurry. You do not need to be chosen today. You do not need to be loved loudly. You need alignment. Alignment is quiet. It does not beg. It does not rush. Alignment waits. Most people cannot wait. That is why they pretend. They pretend to compress time. They pretend to accelerate trust. They pretend to shortcut intimacy. You no longer accept shortcuts. Shortcuts bypass truth. Now you understand why Machiavelli never trusted appearances. He trusted structure. Structure outlasts emotion. Structure survives pressure. You have built structure inside yourself. Your identity no longer floats. It is anchored internally. Your worth no longer rises and falls with attention. It is self-governed. Your peace is no longer hostage. It is secured. This is why people treat you differently now. They sense the shift. Not consciously. Instinctively. They moderate their tone. They think before speaking. They hesitate before testing. Not because they fear you. Because they cannot control you. Control requires leverage. Leverage requires dependency. Dependency is gone. And with it, pretend love loses its purpose. The final realization arrives quietly. You were never meant to be loved by everyone. You were meant to be respected by yourself. Love is not the goal. Sovereignty is. Love becomes meaningful only after sovereignty is established. Otherwise it becomes a leash. Now love, when it appears, feels different. It does not demand. It does not rush. It does not drain. It stands beside you, not over you. And if it leaves, it does not destroy you. Because nothing external holds your center anymore. You are no longer a surface others write on. You are the terrain. This is where the cycle ends. People will still pretend to love others. The world will still reward performance. But it will no longer work on you. Because you are no longer operating from hunger. You are operating from choice. And choice is the foundation of power. At this point, there is nothing left to expose. Only something left to seal. Because the final stage is not about understanding others. It is about governing yourself so completely that pretenders lose relevance. This is where Machiavelli would stop speaking about tactics and begin speaking about permanence. Power that must constantly defend itself is fragile. Power that needs applause is already leaking. Power that reacts has surrendered initiative. So the final transformation is quiet. You stop scanning rooms for approval. You stop monitoring tone for reassurance. You stop adjusting yourself to maintain affection. Not because you are hardened. Because you are finished negotiating your dignity. By now, you understand the pattern fully. People pretended to love you because love granted them access without resistance. They mirrored you to accelerate trust. They flattered you to soften judgment. They attached identity to approval so you would police yourself. They rationed affection to train behavior. They moralized your boundaries to regain control. And it worked only as long as you were emotionally available without authority. That chapter is closed. Now you live by a different code. You no longer interpret attention as value. You no longer confuse proximity with loyalty. You no longer treat emotion as instruction. Emotion still exists, but it no longer drives. It informs. This is the defining difference between maturity and vulnerability. Vulnerability without structure is exposure. Vulnerability with authority is strength. You are no longer exposed. Your internal world is no longer public infrastructure. It is private territory. And private territory is respected. Not because you demand respect. Because access is rare. This is where sovereignty stabilizes. You wake up without urgency. You move without explaining. You decide without apology. Your standards no longer feel like rules. They feel like gravity. People either align or drift. You do not chase alignment. You let it reveal itself. Those who remain are quieter, more consistent, less dramatic. They do not pretend. They do not rush intimacy. They do not punish distance. They do not require performance. They stand beside you without pulling. And that is how you know. The need to ask whether someone loves you disappears. Because love no longer needs to convince you. It simply exists, or it doesn't. You also notice something else. People who once drained you now avoid you. Not out of hatred, out of discomfort. They cannot read you. They cannot influence you. They cannot extract from you. So they move on. This is not loneliness. It is filtration. And filtration is the final mercy. You are no longer everyone's refuge. You are no longer everyone's solution. You are no longer everyone's mirror. You are yourself. Complete. Contained. Unmovable. Now comes the final law. Power is not what you impose on others. Power is what no one can impose on you. No one can rush your decisions. No one can guilt your boundaries. No one can weaponize your empathy. Because empathy now answers to discernment. And discernment answers to sovereignty. This is what Machiavelli meant, though few ever listen. The strongest position is not to be loved or feared. It is to be independent of both. Love becomes optional. Fear becomes irrelevant. You move freely. And when affection appears, you no longer collapse into it. You observe its shape, its pace, its cost. If it demands too much, you step back. If it respects your center, you allow it closer. You are not closed. You are selective. Selection is the final refinement of power. The world will continue playing the same games. People will continue pretending. Masks will keep circulating. But you will no longer be part of the audience. You see through it. You no longer bleed on command. You no longer explain yourself into exhaustion. You no longer perform to be kept. Your silence is no longer emptiness. It is authority. And authority does not argue. So this is the conclusion. People pretended to love you because you were once available without protection. They stopped when you became whole without permission. You did not harden. You clarified. You did not lose love. You lost illusion. And illusion was never love to begin with. Now you walk differently. Speak less. Wait longer. And when the world tries again, as it always does, when someone offers intensity instead of consistency, urgency instead of respect, flattery instead of alignment, you will recognize it instantly. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with calm dismissal. Because the man or woman who cannot be manipulated, cannot be conquered, and the one who cannot be conquered, no longer needs to be loved. They are already sovereign.